Our topic today is a very, very important topic, and I am super happy that you are joining us for this particular session of 10 at 10. We're going to be going over the child care minimum standards, and specifically the chapter on developmental activities and activity plans, and then we're going to tie in the very short chapter on discipline and guidance. And it's very intentional on why I chose to combine these two particular chapters together, because they do go hand in hand. I know that it kind of seems like they're complete opposites, developmental activities and activity plans, and then you've got discipline and guidance over here. But I believe they do go hand in hand. They complement each other and they intertwine. So that's why I wanted to do these two particular topics at the same time. If this is your first time joining us for one of our webinars, welcome. We are super happy that you are here. Those of you that are participating live today, you've got a comment section over there that you can make comment or ask any questions that you have. If you're watching the recorded video of this, there are 3 different ways that you can get a hold of us. If you have any questions or if you need more information beyond the scope of the training material, when you go to our website, timthetrainer.com, in the upper right-hand corner, you can send us a direct message straight through our website, or you can email us, or you can call us. Once again, if you have any questions or if you need more information beyond the scope of the training material, and we are able to respond to you in a timely manner. Now, this particular topic that we're going to talk about today with developmental activities and activity plans, discipline and guidance, we're here to do an overview of the child care minimum standards and to talk about the expectations to keep you in compliance with licensing. If you do have any specific questions about a child in your program or a situation that's going on specifically for you, please reach out to me directly, again, either through our website or through phone call or email, and we can have a one-on-one conversation about your individual situation. That way, we can kind of stay focused on our agenda and what we're here for today. But we are always available to you to assist you and coach you and guide you with some situations. So again, anything that's specific to you or your program, reach out to me personally and we can help you out the best we can. This course today has been approved by the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System, otherwise known as TechPEDS. So before you complete your assessment at the end of this course, make sure that you put your personal TechPEDS ID number on your portal with timthetrainer.com. That way your certificate will be uploaded into your personal TechPEDS account. Also, just a reminder, we always want to make sure that you stay in compliance with all regulatory agencies. Training hours must be completed in a reasonable amount of time. So basically that means that you should not be completing more clock hours of training in a single day than the total number of hours worked in that day. You definitely cannot complete more clock hours of training in a single day than there are waking hours of a day. Once again, we just want to keep you in compliance with child care regulations, with Texas Rising Star, with Texas Workforce Commission, all of those regulatory agencies. So our learning objectives for today is to have that comprehensive understanding of the child care minimum standards and how to comply with these rules. So we'll talk about that. Make sure that you understand what is developmentally appropriate. We'll talk about developmentally appropriate activities, give you some resources for that right there. And what must be provided for each child each day based on their specific individual care needs. Also, just know and practice proper discipline and guidance techniques in their license program. So we'll talk about what is required by child care licensing. And then once again, I'll refer you to some additional resources to help you out in that particular area. So that's what I've got for our learning objectives. Now, we've got a lot to cover today in our short time together, so we're going to just dive right on in. So, kind of talking about terms and definitions. And this is really important for y'all to know where this is at in the child care minimum standards and really understand the terms and definitions. You know, I've been talking a lot, especially in my 5-day director credential course. Over the last 9 years, child care regulations has done a wonderful job of kind of cleaning up the standards and regulations to eliminate the possibility of interpretation issues. And one of the things that they've really been focusing on is kind of cleaning up terms and definitions. And I think for this particular course today with developmental activities and discipline and guidance, this is where they have done a lot of work so that there are clear expectations, there are clear instructions, and you don't have as much interpretation issues. So we want to give them a big high five for that work that they've done. They've done a marvelous job, in my opinion. Okay, so the first thing here is you want to look at the definition of an activity plan. You may call it a lesson plan, a calendar, a daily schedule, whatever you call it in your world, that is totally fine. Licensing is going to refer to it as an activity plan. Potato, it's all good. But that is a written plan that outlines the daily routine and the activities in which a group of children will engage in while in your care. Okay? Now, what you really want to focus on here is the plan is designed to meet the children's cognitive, language, social, emotional, and physical developmental strengths and needs. So kind of use this definition as like a checklist per se. When you're creating the activities in your program, are they meeting all of these core areas right here for each individual child? Also, the definition of age appropriate. So activities, equipment, materials, curriculum, and environment, including the child's assigned classroom, that are developmentally consistent with the developmental or chronological age of the child that's being served. Now, on the screen right there, you see a copy of the most recent publication of developmentally appropriate practices that is published by NAEYC. I strongly encourage every school to have a copy of this book, especially the most recent edition that just came out last year. All right. It's always good to kind of go back to the basics in order to move forward, and refamiliarizing yourself with developmentally appropriate practices, I think, is a really good idea. All right. That's been one of my favorite books for many, many, many years. And even the most recent edition, they've done a really great job on it. Now, the other thing I want you to focus on with number 6 is it's talking about not just the chronological age of the child, making sure that you have age-appropriate activities and equipment that's not only appropriate for the chronological age of the child, but the developmental age of the child as well. And in my opinion, you should be focusing more on the developmental age of the child rather than the chronological age. You know, back in the 80s and the early 90s, you know, we really put a focus on this is a 2-year-old classroom, this is a 3-year-old classroom, what is developmentally appropriate for a 2-year-old, what is developmentally appropriate for a 3-year-old. It's really not like that anymore, all right? And licensing has done a really fantastic job in rewriting these standards to get you to focus on the individual child. And I 1,000% support that, all right? So look at that on number 6. As we kind of move into discipline and guidance, I just wanted to throw in the definition of corporal punishment, and that is the infliction of physical pain on a child as means of controlling behavior, all right? So this is like manipulative actions in order to control behavior. So that would include spanking, hitting with a hand or an instrument, slapping, pinching, shaking, biting, or thumping a child. All of these are prohibited in our licensed programs. Under no circumstance, doesn't matter who the child is, doesn't matter who they're related to, corporal punishment is prohibited. We'll talk about that at the end of the webinar today when we get to that particular chapter. And then number 36, the definition of individual activities. So that's opportunities for the child to work independently or to be away from the group, but supervised. And I really want to stress on the definition of individual activities that the child still must be properly supervised even when participating in individual activities. We have a lot of programs that get cited for this one because the whole group is not being supervised. So I'm going to refer you to my webinar on safety and supervision techniques in the classroom, also my webinar on engagement techniques in the classroom, that the caregiver should always position themselves in a way that they can focus on small group and individual activities at all times. And especially if you have more than one adult in a classroom, where you position yourself, where each person's proximity is, needs to be very strategically done so that you've got adequate supervision of the entire group. Kind of moving on with terms and definitions, physical activity, and there are two different definitions that you need to focus on with physical activity requirements. First, we have moderate physical activity, and that is levels of activity for a child that are intensified faster than a slow walk, but still allow the child to talk easily. Moderate physical activities increases the child's heart rate and breathing rate, but they can still talk and have conversation. All right. Now, vigorous physical activity is repetitive physical movement for the child that uses large muscle groups such as arms, legs, torso, that causes the child to breathe rapidly and only enabling the child to speak in short phrases. All right, because they're breathing faster right here. Typically, the child's heart rate is substantially increased, and the child is likely to be sweating while engaging in vigorous physical activity. So you're going to notice when we get to activities, you must have a combination of both moderate and vigorous physical activity to increase the child's heart rate to work those large muscles. And then number 54 is the definition of screen time. Again, I want y'all to pay really close attention to this because it's another item that every year we see more and more centers getting cited for the use of screen time or overuse of screen time or misuse of screen time. All right. But that is an activity during which a child views media content on a cell phone, a mobile phone, a tablet, a computer, a television, video, film, DVD. Basically, anything that has a screen is screen time. All right, that's the best way to describe it right there. Now, if you are using a device for a child to have video chatting with a family member or for inclusive services, that would not be considered screen time. And then we'll talk about school-age children that are doing homework or study on a screen. That is not considered screen time as well. Don't see very much of either of those two situations, but just in case that does come up, that is in there right there. We'll talk more about that when we get to that part of the standards as well. So here's the big one right here, and this is on under terms and definitions, number 57, a special care need. And this was updated in the child care minimum standards just a few years ago. So it's really important for everyone to kind of understand what is being said right here. Now, I always like to remind people, all of this language that we're about to go over that is around special care needs, this has always been part of ADA law, the Americans with Disability Act. And we've had these expectations under ADA for many, many, many years. They have just now moved it from ADA and added it to the minimum standards. All right. So you basically have two agencies now that are monitoring and regulating these expectations. It's the Americans with Disability Act, and it's also the Child Care Minimum Standards. Now you might be asking, why did they do that? Well, it's very intentional. There are some programs out there that, due to your entity or the way your program is designated as a business, some programs may have been exempt from ADA law in the past. All right. And so even though you may be exempt from complying with the Americans with Disability Act, you're not exempt from child care minimum standards. Okay. So that's one of the main reasons why this language was duplicated, was to clarify that, you know, some nonprofits and faith-based facilities that may have some ADA exemptions are not exempt from the child care minimum standards. Okay. So again, very, very intentional. So a special care need is a child who has chronic physical, developmental, behavioral, or emotional conditions or disabilities who also require assistance beyond that required by a child generally to perform a task that are within their typical chronological range of development. Okay, this includes the movement of large or small muscles, learning, talking, communicating, comprehension, emotional regulation, self-help, social skills, emotional well-being, seeing, hearing, and breathing. Y'all, that's a big definition right there. All right. And it's basically, you know, anytime someone needs a little bit of additional assistance or specialized assistance that is beyond what is generally developmentally appropriate for their chronological age in all of these different areas. And here's kind of the way I like to wrap this up for you. I think every single person participating in this video, participating in this webinar, at some point in our life, we've had something going on that we needed a little bit of some extra attention, or we needed some type of little modification. All right? So sometimes we make a bigger issue out of this than it should be made. All right? What it really boils down to is meeting the child where they're at and making appropriate modifications for that particular child to meet their need. There's no reason to put a label on it. There's no reason to, you know, put them over here, put them over there, because this really applies to everyone. Every single child in your classroom at some point in time is going to need a little bit of extra attention. And look at this big definition. They pretty much cover every developmental domain that's out there. All right. But it's not always chronic. All right. It's not always something that's long term, because you see under B as boy, it could also be a limitation due to an injury, illness, or allergy. So a special care need could be short term also. All right. So again, very big definition right here. And the other thing that I really want y'all to focus on, and I think this really helps with intent and how you see a situation, is, again, I want y'all to take your imaginary Mr. Clean magic eraser, and I need you to scrub out, I need y'all to erase the word special needs. All right, because you're going to notice throughout this book, it's no longer called special needs. All right, it's special care needs. And I think that adding that word care in there changes the whole intent and the way we see this. All right, it's a special care need. All right, and for legal purposes, I think that was a really good terminology change as well. But that is in a whole nother training in itself right there. All right. So when we talk about what must caregivers consider when providing planned activities for children in their care, caregivers must provide planned activities designed to meet the individual needs and developmental level for each child. So once again, this is where they're really focusing on the individual child right here. And again, I think this is really good. So what are your responsibilities when planning activities for a child with special care needs? Once again, 2202, I really want y'all to pay close attention to this page right here. This is really important. And I think that this particular page, you should cut and paste this directly into your parent handbook, kind of word for word, exactly as it is right here. All right? But you must provide a child with a special care need with accommodations recommended by a healthcare professional or a qualified professional affiliated with a local school district or a qualified professional affiliated with an early childhood intervention program. Okay? Those are the three individuals that make recommendations for accommodations. Okay? So again, recommendations for accommodations come from a healthcare professional, a qualified professional affiliated with the local school district, or a qualified professional affiliated with an early childhood intervention program. Those are the three individuals that make recommendations for accommodations. It's not the parent or guardian. All right? So if you have a parent or guardian that wants to come into your program and make recommendations for accommodations, that needs to be followed up with something in writing from one of these three people, the healthcare professional or the qualified professional affiliated with the school district or the early childhood intervention program. Okay? But the parent themselves cannot make those recommendations for accommodations. Very important that you see that right there. And this is the part that I encourage you to cut and paste directly in your policy manual. The other key words that I want you to see right here on number 1 is accommodations recommended. And if you need to look up the word recommended in the dictionary, then maybe that would be helpful. But it's not accommodations dictated by these people. They are recommendations. If you are unable to accommodate due to an undue hardship, due to a direct threat, due to a fundamental change in policies or processes, then you're not able to make those accommodations. Okay? Now you're going to need to have some additional documentation. You're going to need to have some anecdotal records, some notes. There's going to be some additional steps right there. But these are recommended accommodations. Most of the time we're going to be able to make those recommendations, but just know that it's not dictated, it's recommended. All right, if there is any adaptive equipment that has been provided to the center for the child's use, then once again, that needs to be used. Now, if it is something that the director or the caregiver needs to be trained by a healthcare professional, once again, that training has to come from a healthcare professional, again, not the parent or guardian. And then number 3, make sure that the child receives early intervention services or inclusive services. All right. So if you have a child that has a therapist coming in to do speech therapy, occupational therapy, play therapy, under the Americans with Disability Act, we have to require those opportunities to take place. Now, you do the best you can as far as arrangements and where they do it. You do the best you can with what you've got. We're not required to provide like a specific amount of space or anything, as long as we allow those services to take place. You just do what is best with your building premises and the space that you have available. Make sure that your activities integrate children with and without special care needs. There are a lot of developmental benefits to having these services and the children participating in activities together. Refer to my training on supporting children with special care needs for more information on this one. We actually talk about that quite a bit in that particular training. And then ensure that caregivers adapt equipment and procedures and vary methods as necessary to ensure that you can care for the child with the special care needs in a natural environment. Okay, so again, just make those changes as needed. All right, so kind of moving on, what written activity plan must caregivers follow? So your operation, the director and each caregiver must develop a written activity plan that complies with this particular chapter. On that activity plan, and again, this could be your lesson plan, calendar, schedule, whatever you call it in your world, it must have the group of children, okay, that this plan is designed for, the age of the children that this plan is designed for. All right, and your plan must include all children regardless of special care needs. So again, it's always going to be pretty broad right there. All right, so again, identify the group that the activity plan is designed for and make sure that you're listing the dates. Is this weekly, daily, weekly, or monthly? This is one of the most commonly cited items in the Child Care Minimum Standards, is that when licensing comes in to do a monitoring visit, you have an outdated activity plan posted. So make sure that you've got a good process in place, that you're updating these activity plans as needed. So the way I've always done it in my schools, it's part of our Friday responsibilities. At the end of the day on Friday, the manager on duty walks the building in the afternoon. They take down the old lesson plan. They put up the new lesson plan. It's just part of our Friday responsibilities. That way we're always in compliance right there. Make sure that you outline the specific daily activities. Include sufficient time for activities and routines so that children can progress at their own developmental rate, and not include long waiting periods between activities or prolonged periods during which a child has to sit or stand still. All right? We want them to stay engaged. We want them to stay busy. So I would have busy boxes or supplemental activities that are always ready to go at any point in time, so that when you're allowing sufficient amount of time for a child to complete an activity, one child is going to complete that activity quicker than other children. You need to have something ready for them to do to keep them busy and engaged. All right. If you do have screen time incorporated in your activity plan, then it's got to meet all of the criteria under 2207, and we'll talk about that here in just a couple of minutes. All right, big page right here. So really want y'all to make sure that y'all understand these expectations. Once again, this is one of the top 10 deficiencies that we see in our programs across the state. So what specific activities must be included in the written activity plan? All right. You must have a minimum of 2 daily opportunities for outdoor play when weather permits, where a child uses both small and large muscles. Now remember, your program gets to define what is weather permits, all right? It's going to be based on the climate that your children are used to. It's going to be based on the amount of shade that you have, the amount of shade that you don't have. But you get to define what is weather permitting in your particular location. But you do need to have those 2 daily opportunities when weather permits. Now, for an infant birth through 12 months, their outdoor play is going to be the amount of time that child can tolerate. All right? So there's no specific time limit for your infant's birth through 12 months. It's how much can they tolerate each day. Now, an infant 13 months through 17 months, a toddler, and a pre-kindergarten age child must engage in outdoor play for a minimum of 60 minutes per day. Okay, so that can be 30 minutes in the morning, that can be 30 minutes in the afternoon, but 60 minutes of outdoor play. All right, so that's pretty easy to understand and comply with. If your program is open part-time, and so you're not a full-day program, you can prorate these times. Refer to the technical assistance box in this chapter, and it's going to tell you how to prorate that, or give me a call, and I can help you with that too. Now, number 2 is where it gets tricky, and this is where I want y'all to focus. This is where people are getting cited, all right? Number 2 is going to talk about a balance of active and quiet play that incorporates group and individual activities, both indoors and outdoors. And it must include a minimum of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous active play for your toddlers. Okay, so again, that can be indoors or outdoors. So your toddler age group is going to get their active play whenever they're outside. Now, B as in boy, under number 2, a minimum of 90 minutes of moderate to vigorous active play for pre-kindergarten age children. Now, this is both indoors and outdoors. So you're going to get 60 minutes of active play while they're outdoors, but they're required to have a total of 90 minutes of moderate to vigorous active play. So that means if they're going outside for 60 minutes a day, you're going to have to also add an additional 30 minutes of active play indoors to get to the 90 minutes. Okay, so 60 minutes outdoors plus an additional 30 minutes indoors is your 90 minutes of moderate to vigorous active play. That's where people are messing up and you're getting cited, is you're not adding that additional 30 minutes of active play indoors. The other deficiency that we're seeing right here is when children are not able to go outside due to weather, okay, you still have to make sure that active play is happening in your program. So if the children are not able to go outside, whatever their designated outside time is, so if it's 10 to 10:30, but you can't go outside because it's raining, then from 10 to 10:30 when they're indoors, they need to be involved in active play. So y'all need to be singing or dancing or doing some exercises or doing some yoga or playing some games. All right, and again, you can't just say, okay, we're going to have center time, free play. That's not going to cut it because you're going to be out of compliance because you're not getting that active play. Okay, so directors that are watching this, when you know that your center is not able to go outside, you need to be walking around and making sure that active play is still happening. Okay, so again, big deficiency right here. Child-initiated activities where the equipment, the materials, and supplies are within the reach of the child, and the child chooses the activity on the child's own initiative. So toys and equipment, manipulatives have to be within the reach of children so that they can access it. All right. I go to a lot of programs. I visit a lot of programs, and everything is up on high shelves, and the children can't get to it. Y'all, that's a teacher issue. All right. We got some work to do with engagement and classroom management in those situations. Okay. Caregiver-initiated activities that caregivers direct or chooses, at least 2 of which must promote movement, regular meals and snack times, supervised nap times, and rest times as outlined in the standards. All right, so let's talk about screen time right here. So when can you use screen time in your program? All right, children under the age of 2, screen time is prohibited. All right, so no ifs, ands, or buts about that one. If it has a screen, it's not allowed in a classroom for children 2 and under. All right, now over the age of 2, you may use screen time to supplement but not to replace an activity for a child, again, 2 years and older. If you are using screen time for a child in your center, you must ensure that it is related to the planned activities and meet educational goals. It is age appropriate. It does not exceed 1 hour a day. So number 3 is the big one right here. Cannot exceed 1 hour a day total, right? So keep that in mind. Number 4 is the other one that we're seeing a lot of people cited for right now. You cannot use screen time during mealtime, snack times, nap times, and rest times. Okay, so you can't put on a video or something like that, during meal times or during nap times. Cannot include advertisement or violence, and it must be turned off when not in use. All right, y'all, my recommendation is just no screen time, period. They get enough of that at home, in my opinion. So let's focus on human-initiated activities, that joint attention, that one-on-one time with your caregivers, those meaningful experiences. That's where you need to be putting your focus. Save the screen time for home. That's just my opinion. Again, if it's a school-age child doing homework, that does not count as screen time. All right, so make sure that your activity plan is posted in a prominent place so that other people can view it. I've always posted mine in 2 different prominent places. I like to post it outside of the classroom for parents to view, and I also like to post it inside of the classroom so the teacher can use it as a resource. Whatever works best for you, as long as it's posted. It does say that you must keep your activity plan for at least 3 months and make it available for review by licensing and parents upon request. I'm going to tell you, keep these activity plans much longer than that. We like to type ours up, make it look nice and professional, save it in your computer. That way, when, a year from now, when you're having to create your activity plans, y'all, there is no reason to reinvent the wheel every single year. Just pull out those old activity plans, adjust the date, tweak up the activities, boom, you're done. All right? So work smarter, not harder. All right? All right, we're going to kind of move on now to discipline and guidance. All right, and again, the reason why I wanted to do these 2 chapters together is when we talk about special care needs and focusing on the individual child and what is developmentally appropriate for that particular child, most of the discipline issues that we see are sometimes related to children being forced to participate in activities that are not developmentally appropriate for that particular child, and the child is kind of having a meltdown or struggling with that particular assignment. So they do really go hand in hand right there. Okay? Now, in your written operating policies, you must have a policy on discipline and guidance. And everybody in your facility, while they are on your premises, have to follow your discipline and guidance policy. All right? So that includes caregivers with their own children enrolled in your program. That includes parents and guardians. All right? Everyone has to follow your discipline and guidance policy. Very important. You also must have a policy on suspension and expulsion of children. And basically, you're going to outline What steps can parents take to prevent their child from being expelled from your program? All right. Refer to my training on suspension and expulsion of children that's located on my website if you want more information on that. We also have a sample policy that you can use in your program if you need to see a sample policy on suspension and expulsion. Now, I did add in here the technical assistance box because this is important for you to see as well. It is helpful to have that policy clarifying the steps that parents can take to prevent suspension and expulsion of children. However, a director may always retain the right to disenroll a child when it is in the best interest of the child or the other children at the center. Very important for you to know that this is in the minimum standards. Even though it's in the minimum standards, you need to also put this in your policy manual. It needs to be in both places right here. Now, we don't want to expel children from our programs. That is never the goal right here. But just know that you do have that ability. Okay? And again, refer to my training on positive guidance and discipline if you want more information on that. So in the minimum standards, it's going to talk about what methods of discipline and guidance may a caregiver use. This is what I recommend for your policy on discipline and guidance. Cut and paste straight from the minimum standards. Their wording is good. It matches our philosophy and beliefs. It's right on target. Just cut and paste exactly what they have down. There's actually a form that you can download from Child Care Licensing's website that you can use for your policy manual. It's pretty much exactly what you see right here on the screen, whatever works best for you. So discipline and guidance must be individualized and consistent for each child, must be appropriate for the child's level of understanding, and it needs to be directed towards teaching the child acceptable behavior and self-control. All right. So again, referring you to my training on positive guidance and discipline techniques. Punishing a child does not teach a new behavior. The only way you can get a different behavior is to teach a new skill. Discipline is something that we develop within a child. Discipline is not something we do to a child. It's something that we develop within them. So a positive method of discipline and guidance that encourages self-esteem, self-control, and self-direction. So using praise and encouragement for good behavior instead of focusing only on unacceptable behavior. So remember, what we focus on, we get more of. So if you're only focusing on the unacceptable behavior, then that's what you're going to continue to get. Practice that positive intent, all right? Focus on what the child can do instead of what the child can't do. Reminding a child of behavior expectations daily by using clear, positive statements, okay? So we constantly have to be reminding children of the expectations. We follow a technique called MAP, M-A-P. So model, add visuals, and practice. Model, add visuals, and practice. And y'all, it's the adult modeling that is the most important part right here. We need to be constantly modeling the behavior that we're expecting from the child. Redirecting behavior using positive statements. And then the child care minimum standards does allow you to use brief, supervised separation or timeout from the group when appropriate for the child's age and development. Okay, I'm not the biggest fan of this because timeout from the group is not teaching a new skill, right? But I like to refer D as in dog, where it talks about using a brief supervised separation or timeout from the group. This is more of an active calming moment so that both the adult and the child can calm, right? So that you can then get them to the higher centers of their brain. 2805 is going to go over the types of discipline and guidance that are prohibited in your program. So discipline and guidance or punishment that is prohibited. So corporal punishment or threats of corporal punishment. So it's not just the actual corporal punishment, but the threat is also prohibited. Punishment associated with food, naps, or toilet training. So you don't want to be giving out candy or treats or anything like that as a form of discipline or guidance. That would be prohibited. Grabbing or pulling a child, putting anything in the child's mouth, humiliating, ridiculing, rejecting, or yelling at a child. So you got to watch that tone of voice. You got to watch that volume of voice. Okay? Very slippery slope right here. Subjecting a child to harsh, abusive, or profane language. And that's not just from the adult. Sometimes that's the other children in the classroom. Okay? So we have to be aware of that too. Placing a child in a locked or dark room, bathroom, or closet. Placing a child in a restrictive device for timeout. That is another one that, especially if you're in a toddler 2-year-old classroom, you need to pay attention to. If you've got a child that is a biter, putting that child in a bouncy seat or putting that child in a high chair, okay, that would be prohibited right there. Okay, so be careful. And then number 9, withholding active play or keeping a child inside as a consequence for behavior. That would also be prohibited. So you can't take away their outside time. You can't take away their active play. They need this. That's very important for them. Okay. Now, once again, unless the child is needing some active calming time, where both the adult and the child need to self-regulate, you can incorporate that at this point in time, but you cannot just take away their outside time or their active play. And then, of course, requiring a child to remain silent or inactive for an inappropriately long period of time for their age, that would be prohibited as well. Directors and administrators that are participating in this webinar, I encourage y'all to go over this chapter with your school family at least once a year in a staff meeting. Just kind of go over it over and over and over again so that people always know what the expectations are. They always know what is prohibited. Have them sign off on it. All right. Every single time you go over this, need to make sure everyone clearly understands these expectations on what we can and cannot do for any child in care. Again, doesn't matter who they're related to. It's everybody. So 2807 is going to talk about just that right there. May your employees discipline their own children who are in care? Yes, as long as they follow your discipline and guidance policy. Okay? But if they want to do anything beyond what is in your discipline and guidance policy, that has to be done at home. Okay? But it's off your property. So that can't be in a bathroom, can't be on the parking lot, off your property. Okay? But they do need to follow your discipline and guidance policy at home. All right, very good, everyone. So that was a lot of really cool information. So incredibly important. Please make sure you review this thoroughly. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Again, you can go to my website, send me a direct message. You can call, you can email. If you have a specific situation going on in your school, I'll be happy to help you with that. But there's a lot of really, really critical stuff right here. Okay. I went ahead and put the link in for you to complete your assessment for those of you that are participating live today. If you're watching the recorded video, then the link is located right there on our website. Very good. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And I hope to see you again very, very soon. Talk to you later. Bye.